Top 10 fallacies in healthcare media. Fallacies are errors in reasoning that make arguments logically flawed. They include unsubstantiated assertions that are frequently delivered with a conviction that makes them sound as though they are proven facts. This is according to the new handbook of cognitive therapy techniques. Today, we will discuss some of these fallacies and how they affect not just people in the healthcare sector, but also the general populace. Number 1. So first off, ecological fallacy. What is ecological fallacy? Well, ecological fallacy is basically the fact that group associations might not be the same as individual associations. An ecological fallacy occurs when an inference is drawn from data based on the premise that qualities observed for groups necessarily hold for individuals. For example, if countries with more Protestants have higher suicide rates, then Protestants must be more likely to commit suicide. As you can imagine, these kinds of associations are most of the time not true, but they are made by a lot of people every day. Number 2, the gambler's fallacy. The gambler's fallacy is related to our predisposition to believe that there are such things as good or bad luck streaks. In retrospect, we can discover streaks in random data all the time, but there is no statistical governance underlying such streaks. In other words, just because something might have worked twice or thrice in a row doesn't necessarily mean it will work always. An example of this fallacy would be something like, I hit my legs 2 times while I was passing by that clinic. I am telling you that place brings bad luck. Number 3, genetic fallacy, also known as fallacy of origin or fallacy of virtue. Simply put, this is where we assume that something is correct or incorrect based solely on the credibility of the source. An example of this would be, I think this drug works for this particular disease because so and so said so. Experts' opinions in medicine are actually way down low in the hierarchy of evidence. While that does not mean that we should discredit them or hold a layman's opinion in high regard, being careful and maybe practicing due diligence it's usually a good practice. Regardless, this fallacy leads us perfectly to our next type of logical error, namely number 4, fallacious appeal to authority. This fallacy goes as such: just because someone is an expert in one field does not imply that they are an expert in all areas of that field. We can easily see this in what happened a year or two ago with COVID-19. We had people from all sides of the medical sector talk about all different aspects of the pandemic. The thing is though, a specialist, for example cardiologist, will not be able to assess accurately something a public health expert can, and vice versa. The news media prefers trusted specialists to return to comment on topics that are increasingly outside of their true area of expertise. An example argument with fallacious appeal to authority will be something like this: I am not an epidemiologist, however, I am a doctor, and I think we must take measures to ensure herd immunity. While this phrase is not necessarily false, talking about things outside of your expertise and in a public setting while also being 100% steadfast about what you say could lead to misinformation, and in a doctor's case could also lead to a lawsuit. Number 5, appeal to tradition. This is the false belief that a lot of people can't be wrong about something from a very long time ago. We see this time and time again with things like traditional Chinese medicine, where a person will trust the seller of a medicinal product because it's ancient and traditional and it has been used for a long time in a secret place in a far away country. This means absolutely nothing. Just because human beings have been using a product or have been practicing something throughout history, this fact in and of itself doesn't prove the validity of its use. A lot of these traditional products and practices usually are sold by sketchy websites and people who are not regulated by EMA, FDA, or other healthcare departments that check for the ingredients in a product and its safety. Appeal to tradition usually goes hand in hand with another fallacy. Number 6, appeal to nature. This is a misleading concept that science is at odds with nature and that you therefore shouldn't trust science. And counter-argument is that just because we've evolved in unison with nature without vaccines, this fact doesn't automatically make vaccines dangerous or useless. On the contrary, we now have way less mortality rate because of vaccines, and some diseases have now been eradicated off the face of the planet. This appeal to nature is especially frustrating because people will sell a product and claim it has no chemical or is all natural without specifying what they actually mean by chemical or natural. Pretty much everything is a chemical if you think about it, and something like poison ivy is natural. The appeal to nature is a huge fallacy that more people need to be aware of. An example of this fallacy will be this: we trust in safekeeping our natural immune system and therefore we don't trust in vaccines. Absolutely bogus, as you can imagine. But let us move on to yet another tactic slash fallacy these websites who sell sketchy supplements use. Number 5. Appeal to popularity, also known as the bandwagon effect. This is the false belief that a lot of people can't be wrong about the same thing at the same time. This can be hijacked both by companies with a lot of fake testimonies on their website, but also by paying celebrities to endorse them. Both logic and history has taught us that majorities can be objectively wrong, but it is socially comforting to remind the opposite side that you have the majority position on your side, which makes your position correct by default. Let us give a clear example of appeal to popularity. 1 billion flies can be wrong, so eat poop. As you can imagine, this type of argument is complete nonsense, even though it is used quite often in devious manner. Number 8. Faulty analogy. This is the attempt to disqualify an argument by making a point using an irrelevant analogy. Analogies can be powerful communication tools, but it's also easy to make comparisons that simply aren't fair or accurate. To put it simply, you cannot compare apples to oranges. They are different, and in that manner, we should be careful as to what analogies we or others use to make a valid point. Classic example of a faulty analogy is this: abortion is murder. Comparing these two things is a little bit far-fetched and it is an absolute state, which is usually a bad thing because we miss a lot of nuance. For example, an abortion in like the second week of pregnancy is not the same as an abortion in the second trimester of pregnancy. In the first case, the heart and the brain haven't even developed, while in the second case they have, and the embryo is much closer to an actual baby. It is also unfair to use this faulty analogy against a woman that might be putting her life in grave danger during pregnancy, or a woman who was forced upon. Nevertheless, let us move on to the penultimate fallacy for today, and that is number 9, the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. This occurs when a person decides on their position and then go out to find only data to support their position and no other position. This fallacy is especially prominent in this digital age of ours, when it's possible to go online to find arguments defending almost any imaginable position. Focusing on only arguments and data that support your position is a surefire way of making mistakes in your final statement. An example of this would be: I found numerous studies supporting my position. I have no idea if there are any other studies supporting your position as well, but honestly, I don't care. As you can imagine, this is a very ignorant way of speaking and thinking, and we should avoid it as much as possible. On a related note, keep in mind the so-called Semmelweis reflex, or Semmelweis effect, which is a metaphor for the reflex-like tendency to reject new evidence or new knowledge because it contradicts with our established norms, beliefs, or paradigm. Pretty much everyone is guilty of this, and there is no shame in admitting it, trying to look at things from a different perspective. Lastly, we come to number 10, the Forer effect, also known as the Barnum effect. We as humans tend to fill in any gaps in information given to us using our existing cognitive schemas. This is, for instance, why it's so easy to think that a horoscope is eerily accurate. Well, that and also horoscopes generalize the hell out of a person, so they're bound to find something that fits you, and this is because we fail to recognize that vague statements might not just apply to oneself but also to a large number of other people too. To combat this effect, we need to stop and think before we assume and calmly assess whether we understood the information given correctly to us or simply filled in the info that was missing. Well, that was it for today, folks. I hope you learned something interesting today, and remember to like and subscribe. Bye for now.